Hi, Mary.
Hello?
Hold on, my speaker's muted. Okay, can you hear me now?
I can hear you, yes.
There we go. I can see the top of your head.
There we go.
There you are. How are you?
I'm fine. How are you?
I'm doing great. I'm back in civilization again. I'm not in Chicago, which is lovely. That was
Back in
interesting.
routine.
Yeah, exactly. When I was on a computer I didn't know, and etc. So this works out much better. All right, let's see. I'm gonna put you up here, I think. There we go. All right. So, well, the question that you asked me about the draft, the lace scarf, you want to
Yes.
talk about that for a minute?
Well, at one point you had said that you made a lace pattern in a scarf. So I was wondering, what it was like.
Was it
And
was it when we were at the at
no,
Panera?
no, it was when we were here on trying to figure out what pattern we wanted to do.
Okay. And so it wasn't something I showed you. I just mentioned it.
Correct.
I know I've made lace shawls before, and certainly you can make a lace scarf with no problem at all. Um, but I don't remember exactly what I was referring to. So what are you thinking as far as a scarf?
Um, I just wanted to possibly try a lace pattern.
Yeah, they're really pretty, and that's a nice pattern for a scarf because it's usually light.
Okay.
And a lot of times when we make lace things, it's good to have either a solid color or maybe big stripes so that you can see the lace in it.
Okay.
Because if you mix stripes and lace or patterns and different colors, plaids or whatever, then you start losing the look of the lace. It's pattern versus color. So a lot of times people will just use one color. They'll use white or pink or something like that. I've done baby blankets where I do large plaid. So think, a big slice or big stripe of pink with a small lace in the middle.
Okay.
And I can send you a picture. I'll make myself a note here of that pattern. It's pretty. And what I do is between the stripes, I put just like maybe one or two shots of white, just kind of delineate them. But okay, so send.
I have a 4 shaft.
Okay, good. So I can send you, I'll show you a picture and I'll send you that draft so you can see what that looks like. And
Thank you.
that's a good one for 4 lace. And it has like blocks of plain weave, kind of look like a plain weave cloth with squares of lace in them.
Okay.
So, and once you get it, and it's not difficult either setting it up or weaving it. The weave is one shuttle usually, and a fairly simple pattern to weave. You don't have to. I don't know. It's like maybe 4 different, like a 1, 2, 3, 4, and then a 3, 4, 5, or a 2, 3, 4, 1, or those kinds of things. So it's pretty easy to memorize and do. So, and it's good summer kinds of things too. With now that it's winter, we want to think about summer. At least I do. I know. So how did you do this week? Did you do okay?
Got it all threaded through the heddle. Yeah.
Did you?
Through the reed.
Do you have very much tangle?
No.
Good. So as straight as you can
I
pull
only
it.
did 25 threads at
Okay.
a time. Okay. And my very last one, I lost my cross, and it was like, it was okay. I mean, because there weren't very many threads.
Exactly. And that's a good reason to do that. And then as you get more experience, then you can, have your warp bundles bigger.
Yeah.
But this way, then 25 threads are nothing to panic about, I think. So that's a good thing.
So I've got them all.
Go ahead.
I got them all kind of cinched up, and they're in a baggie laying on top of my loom.
Who told us about that? Was that you that had come up with that?
I was just my thought. I thought, how am I going to keep these? Because I was going to have grandchildren this weekend, and I have a dog, and it's like I need to make sure these don't get messed up.
Yeah. Somebody mentioned that to me the other day, and I thought, well, that's brilliant. And a lot of times, because you have to go now around the back of your loom, depending on your space, sometimes you want to move your loom. So
Yes.
then if they're not, secured, I've pulled threads before because, I've gotten it stuck on my loom as I'm moving it around.
Hmm.
So that's very smart. Did you tie the bags or how did you kind of make them stay on it?
I kind of just closed them, and I've
Like a
got them
Ziploc bag?
laying on top of my castle.
Oh, okay. Are they
Okay.
Ziploc or grocery
Yeah,
bags or?
yeah, Ziploc bags, sandwich bags.
Yeah, that's a great idea. I'll have to remember that and suggest it to people because I think that would be very smart. And lots of people have cats at home too that love warp threads.
Yeah, I'm sure.
Yeah, mine, I'm lucky. Mine really, she isn't interested. So I've been okay with that. I haven't even had to shut the door of my weaving room because she seems to leave things alone. Sorry. I'm gonna leave for just a second. I'm not gonna turn this off, but I'm gonna go get a glass of water. Okay, I'll be right back.
Okay, sure.
There we go. I have a bit of a cold, and once I start coughing, it just doesn't stop. So I know Leslie's going to be a little bit late. She is her son has an orthodontist appointment. She has
Okay.
little one or younger ones at home anyway. So we'll see if Linda is able to get signed in. It's still not quite 3 o'clock,
Can
but
I ask you, are you
absolutely.
are you doing the class with Marcy?
Yes.
Um,
Yes.
okay. How 3-2 yarn, is that bigger or smaller than the 5-2?
It's bigger.
It's bigger.
Hmm.
And how many colors, different colors, are you going to use?
I just glanced at that thing. Does she say anything about the number of colors?
She does say something about using more than one color. Okay.
Uh-huh.
And so once you look at that, could you give me some direction?
Sure. What did she say?
I can't quite remember, but she said it. I was wondering if it was kind of be like your GAMP that you did.
Yeah, it seems to me also she said something about using a different color in the warp than the weft so that you could
Okay.
see the twill, which makes
Uh-huh.
sense. But I'll take a look at it and see.
Okay.
Um, yeah, I
I
wouldn't.
just read through it once, and so it was like, okay, sounds like I need a couple colors. And I haven't ordered my thread yet.
Yeah, I haven't either. I have some 3-2 at home, and I might just use that so that I don't have to order anything. I have way too much yarn, so and I'd like to stick with what she suggested. I don't want to because I think you probably could use other things, but I will. She seems very pleasant, and I've been told she's a great teacher and things, so I think it'll be a good situation,
Good.
no matter what happens. So,
So I just have to get the scarf, these two scarves off my loom, and then get the next one going.
oh my gosh, then that's not very much time, is it?
I know. I think I've got 2 weeks. So
Okay, you're
yeah.
very ambitious. Okay, well, there's no reason. It's up to you. Well, I was going to say, if you want to go ahead and go the next step after the step I'm going to show you today, I can certainly help you through that if you're anxious to get going on this.
Okay.
Um,
So today we're gonna put it through the
the
petals.
heddles.
Okay.
And
And
then
then
after that, it's tying on the back. And today's lesson isn't very long. So if you want to stay and we go through that next one and you want to try and keep going, and I'm happy, you email me or whatever, I'm happy to, catch it and talk to you or give me a call. And I'll see you next Tuesday, right? But that'll be
yes.
after the next class, won't it? Yeah.
Oh yeah.
So have you've tied on the back before, right? And wound?
Yes. Yes.
Okay. I mean, that's the step that really it doesn't take a lot of skill. Like if you know that the what you're tying onto goes over the back beam and not under it. That's one of the things that people have trouble with.
Okay.
So that you pull your back apron rod over the back beam. But you
Okay.
do rigid heddle, so that's that same,
Yes.
same thing. And then you know to wind paper in there. But
Yes.
I have the next lesson ready, and we can go over it real quick if you want. I don't care.
Okay.
So if you want to, if you're under a time limit. So why don't we go ahead and get started? I know Leslie's going to chime in a little bit late, so we'll see what we can do here.
Okay.
But let me take over the screen here and get my PowerPoint presentation going. Did you have any troubles?
Nope.
Okay, well, good. Because that is probably the hardest. This is maybe the second hardest, getting it through the heddles. And with, a rigid heddle loom, you're pretty much not doing this step because once you're through the reed or whatever, you're kind of through it. So, okay, let me see. There we go. So for this step, you're going to need a heddle hook. And so often it's the same as the reed hook, but you're going to need to be able to get that thread through your heddles, and it's a smaller place. Now, do you have Texsolve or do you have metal ones?
I have metal.
Okay, that's my preference, but I think it's partly because that's what I learned on. But they do move easier, which is good and bad. When you're trying to get something through them, it's not so great, but it works pretty well. You're going to need your weaving draft, and remind me what your draft is. You did the twill?
First eye.
Okay, good. And so that is a 1, 2, 3, 4, 3, 2, 1, 4. Is that how it goes, or it's something
Yes.
similar to
Yes.
that? Okay.
Yes.
And so that's something that you can, kind of have in your head and not have to refer to a lot, but certainly you want it by you. And then I use a stool or a low chair in the back. So you're going to be sitting at the back of your loom at this point. And by sitting lower, I can see then into my loom and through to the reed.
Okay.
Excuse me. And so we'd already talked about having enough heddles for each harness. Were you one of those that had to move any?
Nope.
Okay, good.
Plenty.
But at this point, that's something you want to make sure that you have enough. And then the other thing is that a lot of harnesses have a center hook that holds a harness bar up. And so, do you know if you have one of those on your loom? I'll show you a picture here.
Okay.
So on this picture right here, I don't know if you can see that, but right there, there's a little hook that holds that bar up. Do you have a shacked loom?
Yes.
Yeah, so I think you have something that holds that,
Okay.
both at the top and the bottom. So on my shacked loom, there is a little screw that releases that bar if I need it to be released, so I can move my heddles from one side to the other.
Okay.
You may be in the situation where it's not necessary for you to move them. You have enough on the right and the left that you just pull over what you need.
I don't think that I do have that because I have, threaded this loom before, and I don't think that, because I can push them all to one side or the other.
Okay, good. That is preferable. It just is one less, thing in your way. So, okay. So at this point, what I do is I make a count of how many ones, how many twos, how many threes, how many fours I need to have. And then I make sure that in the center I have, enough. Now, let's say I have 100 heddles on my harness, and I only need 10 of them for this pattern I'm doing, or 20 or whatever it is. I'd kind of like that other amount that I'm not going to use even up and sitting way on the sides of my harness. So let's say I've got 100, I only need 20. That gives me 80. So I'd like to have 40 sitting on either side instead of all 80 sitting on one side.
Okay.
And that kind of balances things out, because these harnesses, depending on your loom, are movable. And if it gets cattywampus, your weaving could get a little bit off too. Okay.
Okay.
Now, it doesn't have to be perfect. If I've got 38 on one side and 42 on the other, that's no problem. But just kind of even it up.
Okay.
And then I take that 20 that I need, and because I'm right-handed, I push it off to the left, and I start on the first one of those.
Okay.
So, and that would be the same for each of the harnesses. All right, so this direction, let me get back to this. It says, so you can look through the loom. So this picture is taken from the back of my loom. The heddles are nearest me, and the reed is up and back. I don't know if you can see it very well. It's kind of a small picture. But I can see those threads sitting down there. And those are the ones that I'm going to grab a hold of.
Okay.
At this point, remember how we tied the reed up. If the reed is still tied up, I let it go, so it's closest to me. So it's tipped back towards me. Okay.
Okay.
And then the other thing that I do is that space at the front of the loom where my threads are through now, I give them, like, I get a hold of my threads and I pull them another space, probably about another 8 inches, so I've got more thread available to me. It's longer. There she is. Hi, Linda.
Yeah, hi.
How are you?
Late.
Mary and I have started, but we'll catch you up. And I know Leslie's going to be late today. She's just going to duck in, and then I'll review a little bit with her too. Okay. So we were just talking about threading the heddles, and I'm going to back up just a little bit. Let me get a second here. We didn't get very far, so it won't be much to back up. Hold on. We'll go back to here and slideshow and share my screen. Hold on just a second. All right. So how are you, Linda?
I'm doing okay.
How are you?
Today's my birthday.
Oh, happy birthday.
Thank you.
Are you going to have cake at least? Are you going to have a little celebration?
Yeah, we're having Chinese for supper tonight.
There you go. Nobody needs to cook, huh?
No, I'm going to be the cook, so.
Oh, okay. Well, happy birthday. All right. So we're talking about getting through the heddles. And Linda, how did you do with getting things through the reed?
I'm a little awkward, but I got it.
Okay. And you got a lot of tangles, or is it in fairly good shape?
No, it's pretty straight.
Okay. So you got there. No matter how you get there, it's, don't always take the straightest rope, but that's okay. So so going through the heddles now, you'd go to the back of the loom. So even though we're warping front to back, it's now to the back part. And for this step, you're going to need a heddle hook. So it may be the same hook that you went through the reed with, your weaving draft, and I usually use a little footstool. Sometimes people use, they have an office chair that'll go low or something like that. Some people even sit or kneel on the ground, but I can't do that so much anymore. So yeah, so be comfortable, but you do want to be able to see as well as you can. And and you're going to have to reach in to the reed and then pull out one thread at a time. So get as comfortable as you can. Mary and I were just talking about how many heddles do you need for each harness.
I need to get up and get my chart.
Okay. Yeah, and you don't have to know that, but you do need to make sure that you have enough on each harness. And then having a center hook. Linda, do you know if you have a center hook on your harnesses for your heddles?
No, because it's just a little baby chart.
Okay.
So I have to measure to figure that out.
Okay. So the picture that's on the screen right now is taken from the back of my loom, and I can see in there that I have my threads through the reed, and I make sure that my reed is untied at this point because I probably would have tied it up straight at the beginning, and I want it to be tipped as close to me as possible so I can see the reed as best as possible. And then I also go up to the front, and I think you just came in when I was talking about that. I grab onto those warp threads and I pull them closer to me by about 6 to 8 inches because now they're going to have to be longer to get through the heddles. And I find if I just grab them by the front beam and pull them to the reed, that's about that amount that I need. So it's just something that I do. So then you want to kind of count out the number of heddles that you need for each harness. And it doesn't have to be exact at this point, but because you probably have more heddles on your harness than you need, you want to kind of even them up and push them to the side, the ones you don't need. So the example I was giving was if I have 100 and I only need 20 on that harness, then I'd put about 40 on each side. I wouldn't put all the 80 extra on one side because it could tip the harness, the weight of them. So get them out of my way. And then I still have to put the heddles that I'm not using to the side a little bit, but I try to keep them away from the ones I know I'm not going to use. All right, so you can see this from the front at the left. You've got hopefully your bundles tied just loosely around your front beam and through your reed. And now your reed's tipped back. And then at the right, where it says from the back, it should kind of look like that at the back of your reed. They'll be hanging down. I usually tie groups of knots. If you don't have knots in yours, don't worry about it. And they just get in your way now because you're going to have to untie them as you go along. But still, it's a good safety kind of measure. Okay. And then this is you can see the group over here that I'm not going to use, the ones in the middle that I am going to use. I kind of counted them out. And at least the ones on the right-hand side, the first half of my project. And then what you can't see over here is to the right is the ones that I'm not going to use on the right. They're just out of sight. Okay, so you're going to use your weaving draft and you're going to begin threading through the heddles. And I think both of you have been through this before. I have a little film. Let me get this out of my way here. Yeah. And so I just grab one at a time and pull them through. I'm going to play that again because what I do is I reach up with my fingernail up to the reed and I am pushing with my fingernail in. And that's how I kind of feel where that next thread is. If I've put 2 threads through that dent in the reed, I can use either one. It does not matter, okay? Just as long as they don't cross between the 2 dents. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Okay, so let me show that. Let's see if it'll play one more time here. Okay, so I push up there. You can see my fingernail. I'm kind of pulling a thread and then pulling it through. Okay, it's a hard thing it's hard to see in there because it's kind of dark unless you've really well lit. It's kind of far away from you and all 3 of us are wearing glasses. So we're probably doing the bifocal thing too. So do the best you can. Once in a while, if I have a really tough one, I'll stand up, I'll take the next 2, I'll go back to the back of the loom and then do those. I mean, if you need to, you can do that too. So now, one thing, if you're a lefty or I had somebody the other day that was a right-handed, but she liked working from the left, most drafts are symmetrical. So that should be Leslie. Most drafts are symmetrical, so it doesn't really matter if you warp from the left to the right, hi Leslie, or the right to the left. Either way is fine, okay? Are you there? Are you in your car? I think she is. Can you hear us? Hi. Okay, so let's go on to the next here. All right, so as I'm warping to, and I'll show you an example of this, but I pull forward groups of heddles according to my pattern. So let's take Mary's bird's eye, for instance. Her pattern is 1, 2, 3, 4, 3, 2, 1, 4. Okay, so Mary, if I just do that sequence, how many ones will you have in that sequence? I think there's 2 of each, right? 1,
yes,
2,
yes,
4,
yes, there is.
2, 1, 4. Yeah.
Yes.
So I pull 2 1s, 2 2s, 2 3s, 2 4s over as a set. And then I warp that group. I might even then do a quick slip knot, slide it over, then I do my next sequence.
Okay.
The 2 2 2 2. I found that really helps with the errors, that I seldom make threading errors anymore, because if I get to the end of those 8 threads and I've got extra 2s and not enough 1s, I made a mistake somewhere, or I didn't pull over enough right.
Okay.
Leslie, can you hear us?
Yeah, hi.
Okay, hi. Are you in your
Sorry.
car?
I am. I just got out of the appointment. It's going to take me 10 minutes to get home. So I told my son, just bear with me. I'm going to call in.
Perfect.
He's going to learn how to, thread the heddles.
There you go. So we're talking about that, and let me get through the lesson, and it's very short, and then I'll come back and we'll review a little bit for you. Okay?
Okay, thank you.
Sure. All right. So does that make sense to everybody that you pull that set? So it depends on what your pattern is. I'll show you a pattern to do that. And then I do tie slip knots. So I might check those 8, make sure they're right, tie a slip knot. Now I don't have to recount those anymore. I know those are right. They're done. All right. So here's an example. Push these pictures up here. Okay, so here is a little bit more complex pattern. I might do this group first because they're all diagonals. And I say, okay, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4. I've got 5 1s, I've got 5 2s, I've got 4 3s, and 4 4s. So I pull all of those over, and then I just warp that group. Once I'm done with that, I'll look at this next group. It doesn't matter how many, and it doesn't quite matter if you do just a couple at a time or whatever, but just so you know what your group is. Here's then maybe my next group and my next group. And then if you have that warping program, that I Weave It program, it'll kind of do this for you. It'll do the threading so that you can set it at how many threads you want and have it be, have it count over for you. So, do you have questions about that?
No, it's pretty clear.
Okay. Anybody else? I'm trying to get you guys back, and there you are. All right. So this step is pretty straightforward. You take your pattern, you put your threads through, and you just tie little bundles of knots. And so that is the step that I have for you. Before the next session, you are going to need some paper or vinyl to wrap around your warp beam and back. So if you don't already have that, I used to use paper bags from the grocery store. If you go buy groceries, in most grocery stores, if you ask them for paper instead of plastic, they're happy to give you some. And if you tell them you're going to use it for a project, they'll probably just slide you some without even, needing anything. But that can work out well. I use vinyl wallpaper with no paste in it. You've probably seen mine before. It's kind of hard to find, but once you do, you can use it over and over. Some people use slats from like a Venetian blind. You can go to Goodwill or something, buy an old one, dust it off, and cut it apart and use that. They're kind of a pain just because as you unwind, they're falling down. But they're at least reusable and recyclable.
Have you ever heard of anybody using like an old vinyl pull-down shade?
Pull-down shade, I think that would work great.
Okay.
That's a great idea, and I look over because I've got some right here on the window next to me, and they're a nice size usually that might just fit right on your loom for that.
Okay.
So yep. I also one time went to like Joann Fabric or whatever the fabric store was, and they sell like a fairly heavy plastic that you can use to make like a tablecloth cover over, or sometimes people make like pouches, like they sew fabric on one side and plastic on the other. So that's another thing that you can get fairly wide and cut it to your loom. And once you've cut it, you don't have to buy it again. You can just keep reusing it. So, all right. So go ahead.
I have a question.
Uh-huh.
Okay, so when we do our threading, we're sitting at the back of the loom, but we don't have to turn our pattern around, basically.
No, that's a really good question. So yeah, I do, because one is furthest away from you, where on the pattern, one is at the bottom of the pattern, so kind of the nearest to you, depending if the book's laying down, right? So it just depends how your spatial sense is. Some folks need to have it, like I'm that way with maps. I got to have it pointing the way I'm going, not pointing north, or I don't know where I'm going. So if you're like that, you might want to turn your book around or your pattern around so that the one is furthest away from you, just like your harness is furthest away from you.
Okay.
Okay, because that is important. Left to right is not as important. It should be symmetrical, but that's not symmetrical. You need one where ones go and fours where fours go.
Okay.
What other questions? All right. Well, I'm gonna tell Linda you're welcome to sign off. I will be back next Monday. I know Mary wanted to have a little bit more on the next step because she's on a time crunch. So we're gonna do that. But Leslie, I'm gonna back up a little bit and talk my way through a couple of steps with you.
Okay.
All right.
Have a good week, everyone.
You too.
Bye.
You too.
Happy birthday.
Happy birthday. Yeah.
Happy birthday.
Thank you.
Enjoy. Okay, let me get back to my slideshow here. It takes just a second. And do you hear that noise? Sounds like the fairy has left, you know? Okay. Zing. All right, from current slide is fine. Okay, hold on just a second. I'm not as good at this program as I wish I would be. I think there's probably some tricks that I just don't have, but oh well.
You just have to give us more lessons.
I know. There you go. Okay, so there we are. Okay. All right, I think we're good. So Leslie, just to recap and to get you to this point, this step is fairly simple. All you're going to do is go through the heddles at this point, okay?
Mhm.
So you need a smaller hook sometimes than your reed. If you have a heddle hook that you use for your reed, you're fine. Otherwise, you need something small enough to get through your heddles. You need your weaving draft because this is where you're going to use it. And then something that you can sit down low. Now, some people are okay sitting on the floor. There are some looms that actually that back beam comes all the way down. You can lay it on the floor and sit in there. But usually that's a big loom that does that.
Yeah, I'm just using a table loom, so
yeah,
it's pretty straightforward.
I have a little like footstool. I don't know if you saw it when you were here, but
Oh,
it's
yeah.
probably about, I don't know, 8 inches off the ground. So that's what I use, but whatever works for you. Okay. And then you need to make sure that you have enough heddles on your harness. And we talked about that last time. Are you okay with that? Do you know that?
Yes.
Okay.
I think I have maybe 3 to spare on 2 of the shafts, but I have enough.
All right. And you can always make one. And if you get in trouble and are not sure how to do that, just get a hold of me. You know, if you miscounted or something. So then the other thing is that a lot of these looms have a hook in the middle of the harness that holds the heddles from going back and forth. Do you know if yours is like that?
I don't think it does.
Okay. It doesn't sound like anybody in this group, which is great because most of my looms have them and they drive me crazy. So, but if you do, you can usually unhook that, slide them where you need them, and then hook it back up again.
Okay.
I like to have about half of the heddles on one side, half on the other, and then I make a count from my pattern on how many I need all together. So how many on harness 1, 2, 3, 4. I think you've done that already. And then of course it's half on one side and half on the other.
Okay.
Okay. And so the example I gave was if I have 100 heddles on a harness and I only need 20 of them on this, let's say on harness 4, then I'm going to put 40 on each side that are things I'm not going to use and just have those 20 in the center.
Right.
Use, okay.
Okay.
Then they're sitting over there. If I miscounted or I need one of them, that's fine. But yeah, so that's the way I do it. I don't put all 80 on one side because it can kind of tip your harness depending on your loom and make weaving a problem. So this is a picture from the front. You can see that you're hopefully, you know, you've got fairly nice straight threads here. And if it's still kind of messy here, you should take some time and get that straightened out so it looks like it's not ready to warp, but it's fairly straight. You don't have things hanging down that are, you know, loopy here. And then from the back of the reed, it should look like this, where you've got maybe your bundles, maybe you don't have, maybe you didn't knot them, that's fine. But just
I knotted mine.
Yeah, I do too. Although I start doing the heddles and then I, forget that I need to undo them. I grab one. So it should look about like this. You can see them now. I do release my reed, like the beater. So remember, we usually tied it up at the beginning to put it through the reed. I release it, let it come as close to me as it can, and then I can see better.
Okay.
If it's still propped up there, it's just further away from me, so I can't see it as well.
Oh, right. Okay.
Yeah. And then here is just a little, and I'll post this. Here's just a little video of me going in and just pulling a thread and putting it through the heddle. What I do, because it is hard to see in there, is I usually use my fingernail and I just I run it down between the thread I'm getting and then the bundle, and try to just get a hold of that thread or threads that are in that dent. If there's more than one, which a lot of you did more than one in some of your dents, it doesn't matter which of those two that you use.
Oh, okay.
Okay. What
Yeah,
matters?
I have 2 in each of my dents.
Yep. So either one of the two, you don't have to worry about that. But if it crosses dents, you accidentally pick up one from the next dent and it crosses over, and then you do one from that dent, then that's going to cause you some problems. And I'll show you how to fix that later. It's a very common thing to happen, but the less you do of that, the better off you are, of course, because you have to fix it as you start to weave. So. That's pretty much the whole thing. You can go from right to left or left to right. It doesn't matter. So if you're more comfortable going left to right, but most of us go right to left because
I was going to say I'm going to go right to left, but like what you were just explaining at the end, I would turn mine upside down because I'll need to look at it the way it's matches up with if I'm standing behind the heddles and pulling it through.
Yes.
Then so my repeat is 10, so I'll probably do groupings of 10 then. And so I can go, okay, so if I turn it upside down and I go right to left, so
it might be different than it will be different than what you did at the front. Yeah, because you went right to left there too. From your reed, you went right. And this time you're going to be on the other end of it because you're backwards. But that's okay because your pattern's going to come out the same. It won't.
My pattern is super. I mean, it's a point draft. So, but if it was complex like the one that you were showing, I guess it wouldn't matter. You would just pick one and go either right to left or left to right.
Yeah, and you know what, that complex pattern, let's go to that. I would end that the way I began it. Can you see the whole pattern? See how there's diagonals at the beginning of it? I would take those diagonals and put them down at this end.
Right.
Like they would be drawn in there. And so it wouldn't matter if I started at the left or at the right because it would look the same.
It would end up being symmetrical, like you said.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, it would. So that shouldn't make a difference at all.
Okay.
All right. So that really is, did you see this part? That's just the groupings. That's how I grouped them, but it doesn't make much difference. And then you'll just need paper for next time. And that's where you came in with us. Yeah.
And I have that.
Okay. Are you reasonably confident then? I don't want you to feel like I rushed you.
No. Okay. Yeah, I think I was starting to get a grip on it. So I think I understand. If I have a question, I'll just email you or get a hold of you. But I think I have an understanding.
Okay, and I'll get this on Schoology, the link to it, but also just that video of I don't remember whatever I took a video of. I'll get the video so you don't have to watch the whole thing too. But this will be up there, I think. Okay.
Thank you.
All right. Happy orthodontist.
Okay. Have a good week.
All right. Talk to you soon.
Okay. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
All right, Mary. Do you want to go ahead? Should we go ahead with the next one?
Sure.
All right. Let me grab that up. And then it's up to you. Just let me know if you plan to be at next time or not. If this was enough and, you made it through, then that's fine. But
I'll probably try and be at the next lesson because I like to listen to people's questions, you know.
Yeah, and sometimes you get more out of that. Plus, I'm going to talk about, some tips and tricks, and sometimes people have things that they do that to offer too, which is really great.
Okay.
So, okay, let me get this going. Okay, can you see that?
Not yet.
Okay, hold on then. I've got to do one more step here. I'm going to go this way. Okay, I have to share it, I guess. Let's see, make sure that's the right one. Yep. Okay. So I have not gone through this. I mean, I looked at it the other day, but it's possible that it's not in the perfect shape that I'll have it next time. So I always revise. So, okay. So, so the next thing is tying on, winding on, and weaving. And, I'll talk about threading errors and how to check for them. And a floating selvage, have you done one of those before?
I did, yes.
Okay. So, and your pattern, you'll need one.
Okay. So I'll have to add an extra thread, right?
Right, on each side.
Okay.
And it's an extra thread that can be done after you're all done with everything else, because it doesn't go, it can become part of the tie-on the front, but it doesn't get wound on with the back or anything, and then you weight it separately.
Okay, so it's tied on the front.
Yeah, and I'll go over that, okay?
Okay.
I've got some things. Okay, so you're going to need that paper or vinyl to wrap around the beam.
Okay.
And then, like I said, be sure to bring your apron rod over the back beam before you tie, and then it's the same on the front too. So here is what it would look like then when you have it through the heddles. And this is from the back of the loom again. You can see my treadles down here. That's the front of them. So that's what mine would look like at that point. And then what I do is I start taking small amounts, maybe it depends on the thread. You're using 5/2 cotton?
Yes.
Okay, so I'd take maybe, I don't know, 6, 8, 10 threads on each side, maybe 6 to 8, in each hand.
Okay.
And then I'm going to be tying them around this beam.
Okay.
I have a little film. I do tie them a particular way. In the back, it really doesn't make that much difference as long as they're secure. In the front, it makes more difference. And the reason is because this particular knot makes it easy to get good tension. Because you have to keep fiddling with the tension until it is even on your weaving, and I'm sure you know that. But so what I do here, and I've got a little video of it too, is that I split that group of warp threads. So it's probably 10 to 15 warp threads. I split them in half. You can see that now. Here's the apron rod right here, and it's went over here. You can see it better back here. There's the threads that went over the beam. And then I come up on either side with the end, and then I tie a knot.
Okay.
Okay. On the back, I tie a double knot right away because I don't have to tension that. So I'm just securing it. Okay. So you can see in this particular one, I did 4 groups, and they're fairly large groups. Not huge, but fairly large. All right, and here's a little video of that. You can hear my news show in the background. Whatever I'm watching, I don't know. All right, so you can see me pull them apart, come up around each side, and then I'm just tying a knot there. Okay.
Okay.
Now, I'm not happy about that apron beam being so, see how, crooked it is?
Yeah.
I'll get that evened up, but yeah, that loom's a little hard to manage sometimes. Okay, so double knot and then evenly across the apron rod, just kind of spaced.
Okay.
And then the next thing you're gonna do is wind on. So this is where you're gonna release them in front. You're gonna unwind them off the front beam, get them all kind of loose, and then you're going to carefully and slowly wind the warp onto the back warp beam.
Okay.
What I do is, and this is where I think I need to add something to this, but I usually use my beater and reed for a little bit of a comb. So I will take my beater and I will gently move it to the front of the loom, and then I wind on the back, and that's going to usually pull my beater back because the threads are a little tangly up there. They're going to grab hold of that. So when I hear that beater bang back, then I know I need to go up front, straighten that much out again. So I'm usually winding about 6 to 8 inches on at a time.
Okay.
Okay. And the other thing that I do is I'm really careful. Now, 5/2 pearl cotton, you pretty much have to try to break that. You know, so if you're paying attention and keep, patting your threads on a regular basis to make sure back there they aren't like winding around something and getting caught, then you're probably going to be fine. They get a little tight, then you can go and fix that, okay? If you're doing something that's more tender, you've got to be more careful. But here's some steps. So this number 1 here is beginning to wind the warp around the beam, and you can see that it's hard to see a little bit, but my apron rod is over, and then I haven't really started to wind yet. And number 2, now my threads are starting to go over that back beam, and it's starting to wind. And then in number 3, that's the point at where I need to start the paper.
Okay.
Okay. And really, I could go till they're almost winding around each other, and it would be fine. But this kind of gives you a nice even space without knots and things to get your paper started. But
okay,
you're fine either way. I do try to make sure that before those knots hit those threads that I've started with a paper.
Okay.
Here's the paper starting. Now, it's interesting because different looms, their beams turn different ways. I don't know. I think a lot of us have looms that somebody like put together, and whether they put it on backwards or what, I don't know. But not even the looms that I have that are all the same brand. I have a couple that go the opposite. So just make sure your paper winds on the way that it needs to, and then you can see it. Not the best picture ever, but you can see the paper kind of hanging down there. Let's see. So this is a very small video, but this is just shows you this is the back of the loom. I'm starting to wind, and you'll see me patting the threads, and that's how I tell if I'm getting things too tight.
Okay.
So yep, I just do that a lot as I'm winding. And it is possible, even if it's not tangled at the reed and the reed moves forward just fine, some yarns will tangle around the heddles. Okay, so that, and especially the further you get, these yarns are wound pretty tight, and so they a little bit are trying to unwind, and so it depends on the yarn that you have, but that can happen. So don't be assured that just because it was fine in the reed that it isn't, tangling up somewhere else, okay? That most happens when you have more than one thread in a dent. And are you doing 18 ends per inch?
Yeah.
Yeah, so you do one and then two?
1, 2. Mm-hmm.
So those two, they could be tangled up with each other, and then after a while they're not tangled, but twisted. And the more they twist, then there's nothing that's untwisting them except those heddles. So so just keep an eye on it and just go slowly. There's no reason to hurry through it, and the slower you go, the more confident you'll be. Okay, so this is at the front of the loom then, and I am making the same knot that I did at the back. I take a small bundle. Usually I take a little smaller bundle, and my kind of rule of thumb is 1 inch. So if you have 18 ends per inch, I'd take about 18 threads, which means 9 on either side, right? Mm-hmm. So you're taking that, you're going over and around your apron rod, you're coming up on either side, and then you're making a single knot at this point.
Okay.
So you get it done all the way across. I often, if I'm doing a big warp, I often start in the middle because it will get looser in the middle and tighter on the ends, you'll notice.
Okay.
If you start in the middle. So anyway, I get them all tied with a single knot. Then I go back, and to tighten that particular knot, you hold both ends, you pull up towards the beater. So you're from here up towards the beater, and then you tighten it. So up and tighten it, up and tighten it on each one. And then I just feel with my hands, see if it's gotten, if it's even, and then keep fiddling with it until it's pretty even.
Okay.
I also sometimes will tighten my front beam a little bit. So I might tie all my knots, tighten my front beam a little bit, and then get the ones that are still kind of loose.
Okay.
Okay. Once you feel like they're loose, then tie the double knot, tie the second time, and you're ready to go.
Okay.
All right. One thing you can do before you tie that double knot or right after is check for these errors. And I'm going to go over that, but that might be something you might want to do before you tie the second. Here is a little video. I don't know if it's how visible it is, but this is me doing that second tensioning.
Okay.
See me pull forward. I just go through and pull. I go up and tighten.
Okay.
And usually especially the end that you started with is going to be pretty loose to begin with. And the other reason it gets loose is because if you've wound a lot on the back beam, it isn't under tension. And so then, that paper is around your threads, and there's air in there too. So once you start working at the front, you're going to be pulling more. And in fact, sometimes I have to go back to the back beam and tighten it a little bit because I got, it's a little bit too loose. So
Okay.
Do you want to see that again, or was that enough?
I'm good with that.
Okay. All right. So single knot on the front, tension across, and it might take you a couple of times to do it. Make sure they're even across the apron rod. I try to get half. If every apron rod is tied different, but if there's a center tie to the loom, I try to get half on one side, half on the other, and make sure that apron rod. Remember that one I had on the back that was all cattywampus. We want to make sure that that's straight, especially on the front, because otherwise your weaving's going to be diagonal too.
Okay.
So, all right. So, the threading error. Let's see. I have a little video here. And let's watch this once, and then I'll talk through it too. But here is what it should look like when you open your shed for the first time. So that's 1 and a 3. You put them down. But now, can you see these threads right here?
Yes.
How those two didn't lift up? Those are ones that are probably, I'm going to pause this for a second, probably crossed in your reed. And the reason they don't lift up normally is because of that cross. Okay. So you can, when those are lifted up, you can look on the back then and see if that's what's going on or not. So what I do then, once I saw those two that were crossed, let me go back here, those two right there, I take my finger and I get a hold of them, probably from the top. And then what you saw is that clip that I had, and it'll start here. See that clip right there?
Yes.
It's holding those two threads right now. Okay. And so then I'll let everything down. I'll take my feet off the treadles, and now I've got a hold of those two threads. Those are the bad ones. So I'm going to untie this knot right here and take them out, just those two. I'm going to take them out of the reed back here and fix them. So it's a pretty easy fix. The only thing then I have to do is go back and retie this knot once I get them back through the reed towards me, and then make sure everything's tensioned up. So let's go back. Let's go through this here. Okay, so pull the threads out of the reed, and that's to the back, right? So they're going to come out. It's kind of a scary thing, but then you're going to pull them back through the reed in the right order. And your heddles will help you. You'd know that the one heddle goes on one and the one on the other. And now you can see that they've lifted normally. Okay? All right. Any questions about that?
I don't think so.
I would say expect that error. If you don't do that, be surprised. And I'm not kidding you. Like 80% of the people that I teach in my classes have it, probably even higher than that, have at least one of those errors before they can start weaving. And if you start weaving and you're starting to hit threads, you might have forgotten, or you might not just have seen that one, okay?
Okay.
Now, sometimes at the beginning, let's look at the beginning of this again. Sometimes when you first lift your threads, hold on just a second. Sorry. When you first lift your threads up and you open up your shed, you might see that they might be down a little bit. So run your hand in there to kind of make sure, because when you've tied those knots, those threads are a little bit, not tangled, but they're not releasing from each other. So do that first, okay? Don't immediately assume that you have a problem. But if that doesn't take care of it and they're still sitting halfway, then it's probably a threading error, okay? All right. So another thing that people wanted me to talk about, but I don't know if you have this, is tying up your treadles. How many treadles do you have on your loom?
Mine's a tabletop. Okay.
Oh, okay. And so you have 4. Okay.
Yeah.
So this step isn't necessary. We'll just skip this for now, okay? It's, some people have more treadles than they have harnesses. So we're going to skip that, but you do know that you're treadling, you're going to read from
left to right.
Yeah. And no, actually from top to bottom.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Yeah. And so whatever one is on the top, that you go straight up and see which of your levers that is. Then whatever's next. Yours is probably going to be in a diagonal. It'll go one way, then diagonal down, and then it pops over to that 4.
Okay.
So it's basically the same as your threading, only this time for your levers, it's going to be, first you put down 1 and 2. Then you put down 2 and 3, then 3 and 4, then 4 and 1, and then you go back 3 and 4, 2 and 3, 1 and 2, and then 1 and 4.
Okay.
And then you start that sequence again. And that's a very classic treadling for any kind of point twill, and that's what you're doing. So your bird's eye also, you can treadle it differently. You might want to play with it a little bit, especially if you have some extra warp on there. And do you have the Davison book?
Yes, I do.
Yeah, so if you look up your bird's eye treadling, it'll show you all sorts of variations that you could do if you want. It's kind of fun to play with. So, okay, so let's see. Okay, so on to floating selvages. And I've got a picture of this. So the floating selvage is 1 thread on each side. It's threaded through the reed, but not through a heddle. It's tied on the front apron, and you can either tie it in with the rest of the warp or just tie it separately. One of the reasons to tie it in with the rest of the warp is, are you making a scarf?
Yes.
Yeah. And will your scarf have fringe?
Yes.
Yeah. Then it's nice to tie it in with that bundle, each bundle on the end, because it'll be the same length as your fringe. And it should probably be the same thread as whatever you have on the end. But if you don't do that, that's fine. Just be sure you tie it long enough that when you untie it, it can become part of your fringe.
Okay.
The other reason for not tying it on its own is that knot gets tight. If you've tied 16 ends together, it's a bigger knot than if you tie one end to itself.
Okay.
Right? But I just get out a pin and, wiggle it till I get it out. Okay, and then you have to wait. That thread then goes all the way back to the back of the loom, over the back beam, and then is weighted somehow. And do you know how you're going to weight yours?
Yeah, I've got a clamp.
Okay, perfect. I love those clamps. They really make things easy. I usually measure my floating selvage that I know it's longer than my warp. So for instance, if my warp's 3 yards long, I might measure it out at 4. It's just one little piece of string, and then I know it won't, run out before I need it to.
Okay.
But okay, so here is one. See how it's tied on the front?
Okay. Mm-hmm.
Just like that. On this project, I did not tie it with the last warp bundle, but you can. Okay.
Okay.
And then where it runs through on the reed, I don't know if I have that, is that I put it in the next dent from my last warp thread. So here is my last warp thread. I put it in the next dent. It doesn't kind of look like that. It looks like there's a gap, but there's not.
Okay.
and I don't put it in the same dent. Even if this was a 1 and you're doing 1s and 2s, I found if it's in the same, because I'm lifting that thread sometimes, that it just gets in the way. I don't know, they don't behave.
Okay. But it does not go in the heddle.
Correct. No heddle. And that's what makes it kind of stand up, and that's the one you're going to always go around. Every time you throw your shuttle, you're going to go around the floating selvage. Have you used one before?
Yes.
Okay. And it's something just you have to get used to. But my method is, if I have my shuttle on the right, I go over the floating selvage, and on the left, because my hand is free, I'm finding the floating selvage on that side and lifting it up.
Okay, so you go under it.
Goes under it. So over and under is how I do. But just so you get a system that works for you and that you don't have to think about after a while is, sorry, the most important. Okay.
Okay.
Okay. So, I don't know if you can see it. It is in the next, here's one dent, and this really is sitting in the next dent. And it sits up when you have your treadles down or your levers down or whatever, and you're just in neutral, it'll be sitting there up above everybody.
Okay.
Okay. And then, like you said, the clamps, I was just showing that, and they hang freely back there. And every once in a while you have to go back and, because they'll climb up as you're getting your weaving done. And you just have to remember to go back there and let them
Sure.
go. Okay. All right. So that's what I've got. And
I'll see how far I can get.
Yeah. And feel free to get a hold of me, really. I'd much rather you get your answer to your question and get going, to the next step than sit around and worry about it. So. Okay.
Thank you for your help.
Oh, you're welcome. And I'll see you next week, and then I'll see you the day after. So I'm in charge of the program next time. I'm excited, but I got to get going on it. We're going to be making cords for, like winding.
So I made a scarf. And the warp is 5/2 cotton. Okay. Can we twist that?
Oh, yeah, for sure.
Okay.
Just make sure it's long enough.
I haven't cut anything off of it yet at all.
Okay.
Should I cut it off and even it up before we do this?
No. And we'll have scissors there. So if it's too long, you can do it there. Just get it long. But I'd say 6 to 8 inches is nice.
Okay. 6 to 8.
Yeah.
Okay.
If it's, 12 or something, yeah, you could trim it up. But and it depends on how long you want your fringe. Some people really like a long fringe, but because it'll get shorter for sure.
Sure.
But yeah, I'll have my machines there. We're going to be doing just like big pieces too. But yeah, if you got your scarf there, it'd be kind of fun to get started on it. That'd be neat to have something.
Very good.
So, okay. All right. Well, we'll see you soon.
Thank you. Have a good day.
You're welcome. You too. Bye, Mary.
Bye.